Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of Competitive Corner. I'm your host Ryan, and today we're going to talk about dealing with your threats when building a team. So to start off with, the best way to figure out who your team needs to prepare for is to go to Global Link, go right over to the rating battles, click doubles, because we're talking about VGC here, and scroll down to the top 12. Now this changes from season to season, but for the most part you'll see the same 12, pretty much there, I mean, Kangaskhan, Landorus, Amoonguss, pretty much everyone on this list has been a top 12 at some point in this generation, in 6th gen, so you gotta pay attention to these. So this is the first part. So I mean, what I'm going to show you real quick is we're gonna hop over to Showdown, and let's take this team for example. Now this is my team that I built with Mega Camerupt in mind. So something like this, you're gonna have to really pay attention to the threats, what you can and can't take, because if you go into a game, especially a tournament match, where you can't take a Landorus, you're going to be kind of up a creek. So when you build a team, the first consideration, and I've done this before in videos, is basically the team itself. You want to make sure that everything works together, everything, fits well. You have a weakness to water, well, you're going to want something to take that water weakness, and so on and so forth. So the first step is always to get a team. The second step you want to do is go over here, look at the top 12 and say, can I take these 12? You're going to see these 12 in pretty much, you're going to see at least 1, maybe 2, maybe even 3, maybe even 6 of these 12 in pretty much every single battle that you're going to be having. So you want to make sure you can actually adequately handle them without it turning into a problem. So like, for example, you've got, I'm just trying to find something, like you have a Heatran here, right? You have Heatran. If you can handle Heatran, you're pretty solid on most of the other fire special attackers in the game. So by the reason they're the top 12 is because they're the best at what they do. I mean, sometimes people just really prefer it because, say Landorus is really popular right now, right? And what's really good at beating Landorus is water types, so Politoed actually made somewhat of a resurgence in this specific season because it's actually pretty good at handling Landorus. Also you've got things like Talonflame and Heatran, and Politoed's pretty good at handling those. So I mean, you really have to, the top 12 really shows you what the format and the meta is going, and it's really crucial to knowing how to deal with those things. So let's take my team for example, and it's gonna be a lot of awkward switching here because I don't know a quick way of doing this, but right here. So I have Ferrothorn, Gastrodon, Camerupt, Dusclops, Cresselia, and Tyranitar. Now the top 3 are Kangaskhan, Landorus, Therian, and Amoonguss. So can I handle those 3 with the 6 that I have? Well, let's see. Kangaskhan is actually kind of beaten very easily by Dusclops. I can't really touch him with Nightshade because Nightshade, he's immune to it. But a combination of Will-O-Wisp and Pain Split will actually kind of work well in my favor, especially since burning a Kangaskhan will do wonders for me. And the fact that I can't actually hit it with Nightshade is actually a positive because Kangaskhan's do tend to run Sucker Punch, and that's something else that you really want to check here. You're going to click this Kangaskhan, and you're going to see the moves right here. And you can see Sucker Punch is the second most used attack in the game, whereas Crunch, the other move that can hit you super effectively, is only 6.5%. So, if you can avoid the Sucker Punches, you're in a good position. So, this Global Link is an amazing thing that they added to this generation. I don't think it existed beforehand where you can look up, the usage stats and stuff like that. And it's perfect. You can see exactly what you need to counter. Like, something, when I make sets, I always factor in Aegislash, because Aegislash is literally, it has the most potential to be the strongest Ghost Steel type in the game, especially. So I always factor that in, and I always factor it in with the choice specs. And look at that, nothing runs choice specs, and I mean, there's really no reason to. But the fact that I calc for choice specs Aegislash means that no matter what Aegislash I go against, I know I will be able to live its attacks and deal with it. So this is really useful, because if you wanna look at this and you see, okay, Life Orb is 13.9%. Is that 13% really worth you dedicating more EVs to? And that's what's really nice about this, is because you can get really down to the details to find out how much this threat really runs. You know, does this thing really run hyper offensive? Is this going to be hitting me really hard? Should I worry about that Life Orb, or should I worry about not hitting it super effectively because of the weakness policy? So that's honestly one of the best sources. And so yeah, like back to what I was saying. So Kangaskhan's really prevalent in this format. So Dusclops is a counter pretty much like dead straight. Ferrothorn's really solid at beating Kangaskhan with the Rocky Helmet and Iron Barbs. So that's pretty much, honestly, I have two things for it. That's a threat down. I don't have to worry too much about Kangaskhan. And you know, some things here and there, you know, Tyranitar resists its stab. Cresselia can take hits really well. Camerupt can at least take a return and do a lot of damage back with either Heat Wave or Earth Power. And Gastrodon can also take an attack, and you know, it's not going to really be doing very much damage back, but it's still there. So then you think, okay, my team's made around Camerupt, that means Landorus is going to be a big threat. Do I have ways for Landorus? And then you have to look, okay, Dusclops, again, physically bulky, as you can see, 252 HP, 160 defense, excuse me. And again, you know, Will-O-Wisp, Pain Split. It doesn't get a Sucker Punch, so even if I'm under Trick Room, I can go for Nightshade without fear, and that does a solid 50 damage every single turn. I use it, so that's, again, really good straight counter. Cresselia, while Landorus does have the move U-Turn, and we're going to go see how common U-Turn is. U-Turn is on 68.1% of the set, so U-Turn's very common. So then you have to think, okay, so Cresselia can take an Earthquake, can take a Rock Slide, can take a Superpower, but can it really take those U-turns and knockoffs? And that's where you go into Held Item. So we see a staggering majority of Landorus's run Choice Scarf. So when you're figuring out the threats, you're also kind of figuring out your EVs at the same time. You can think, okay, Scarf. Do I build for the Scarf? Do I build for the Band? Do I build for the Life Orb? And that's what these stats, again, are going to really help you with. The most threatening Landorus in this format is Choice Scarf. As you can see, people use it the most. So, you want to build for Choice Scarf. Now, obviously, if you're like me and you want to really go over the top, you build for Band. But that's really not necessary, because you can see, you know, there's only 6%. So 6% of Landorus is you may not survive. I mean, spoiler alert, you will, but you understand what I'm saying. I think you guys understand the points that I'm trying to make. You want to make sure that your team can handle those threats, and this is how you do it. You go back and forth. You go to the global link, you open up the top 12, you see, okay, you compare your team, and you know what, this is probably the best thing to do before you do your EVs, because this way, you know, unless you're doing something like Gastrodon, who honestly, you're not really going to be doing anything crazy with the EV spread, because you want to go, you don't have much offenses, you want to kind of push that a little bit. But like something like Cresselia and Dusclops, you want to kind of fit those EV spreads to the metagame. You want to make sure that it can fit. And that's something that's really crucial to playing this format, is knowing who the threats are, knowing if your team can handle them. And that's something that I used to do. I don't do it as much anymore because I stopped going to tournaments. Not that I don't want to go to tournaments, but because it's been quite difficult to get to tournaments. This is the right one. This is what I did. All right, this looks nuts. It's crazy, I know. This is what I did for some of my teams. I have it for 3 of my teams. Basically what I did was I took the top 12, and then I used another article on Nugget Bridge, which I'll show you in a second, and I calced against some of the strongest attacks in the game, and in fact, most of the attacks in the game, as you can see, to see what I survive, what I should be weary about, what is a problem. So look at this. So this is Altaria. This is a Mega Altaria. So I calced it with Mega in the Mega form, and this just shows like, okay, I can't take this Moonblast. It KOs me 100% of the time. So I know that, you know, this is like an extensive threat list. If you want to go basic, just go for the top 12. The top 12 are gonna be the most prominent. I'd say even maybe like the top 20 if you know, like currently I think Politoed knocked out Charizard Y, or just Charizard in general, from the top. You can't see Charizard here, and Politoed wasn't there last season. So Charizard was knocked out by Politoed, so you should still calc for Charizard, because Charizard's still going to be there. It's just not used as much as Politoed. I'm trying to talk over this answering machine. I forgot to grab my phone to stop that. So, I mean, like, honestly, it's just, you have to calc for the top 12. You have to make sure you know who else is used. You know, like, Charizard Y is pretty prominent. You know, we can really quickly scroll to Season 10 to show. You know, you see Charizard Y is there. Cresselia is there as well. If you don't have a way to knock out a Cresselia, you're kind of in a bad position. Who replaced Cresselia, actually, now that I'm kind of curious? Amoonguss, it looks like. Interesting. But yeah, I haven't looked at this yet. So, yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I do. I like doing these. Oh, I keep doing the wrong one. I like doing these because they're really, really, really in-depth. It shows what everything, you know. And I color-coded it. Green means I'm not too scared of. I mean, this is a max special attack Aromatisse that you're looking at right now. There's no reason to calc for that. You're never going to see an offensive Aromatisse. I mean, you might, but you really won't. So there's no reason. Articuno's not prevalent at all, so even though it has an 18% chance to one-hit KO my Altaria, I don't really care, you know. I don't care about you. Aurorus, you're never going to see, so it doesn't really matter to me. But the reds are things that you can see a little bit more often, or that the rest of my team can't really handle. And the dark red is something that my team can't handle, and it's a problem. And, you know, now that Mega Metagross is actually kind of prevalent, this team's not very happy about that. And, like, you can just scroll over and see that I have various different amounts, different Pokemon. You know, Cresselia, as you can see, doesn't really have too many problems in this format. It can take pretty much every Pokemon. These are the only 7 that it can't take, and they're very specific. 3 of them I don't really worry about because I have counters on the rest of my team. And that's kind of what the green also means. It's like, even if they're not that common, I should still worry about them in a bit. But there's something on my team that handles it like pretty much perfectly. So if that shows up, it's like whatever, you know. And then I kind of just do it for the whole team. And then when I do that, I finish it off with a team threat list, which is basically just the Pokemon that I don't really have much of a solid counter for. And that's what I'm saying, you know. So like Sylveon's a pretty big problem, especially if it's choice specs, you know. Psyshock. So I said any checks on my team. I said yes, you know, Venusaur and Ferrothorn. What are you barking at? I don't know if you can see my dog. Hey, it's okay. I said Venusaur and Ferrothorn, but the problem why it's not a counter is because Psyshock 2-hit KOs Venusaur, HP Fire 2-hit KOs Ferrothorn. So this is kind of how I go about dealing with threats. I go really specific. I go, you know, I just delve in. You know, if this is a team that I'm considering bringing to a tournament, this is what I would do. I don't do this for every team. The teams that I use for VGC prep are made the day before, so there's really no testing involved. And then finally, I take a type chart just to see, you know, what hits me and what doesn't hit me. You can't see the last two, but the only thing that hits my team pretty hard is Ghost, and so that's something to consider. But I mean, I talk a lot, and with not much else going on. But the last thing is Nugget Bridge posted this article in the beginning of 2015. 50 Pokemon to prepare for, and this is a really good list to look at for this format. I don't know, they do it every year, because as you can see, there's a 2014 overview, but this is a good list to see because it also goes pretty in depth. Like, this is Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan's the #1 used Pokemon right now on BattleSpot. It's not as used in tournaments, but it's still pretty popular. It gives you the stats, what happens. It gives you moves that are used. So this list right here is data you can get straight from the global link. And then, you know, common items, obviously you're not going to see much else. And then they give you some notes, you know, like this is the most common Pokemon overall. Double Edge over Return, Low Kick over Power Up Punch, just showing you like kind of ideas and you know, like something that we're glad that we didn't get, Seismic Toss Kangaskhan, because that would have been a problem. It shows you that, like, oh, you know, it also gets Low Kick, Ice Punch, Drain Punch, and Fire Punch, which is kind of crazy. It kind of explains, you know, oh, you know, Jolly is a little bit more common than Adamant. Although remember, this is, you know, early of the game, early of the 2015 format. So it's not as up to date, you know. Jolly's probably not used as much, I don't think. I'm actually kind of curious. I don't think it is. Oh no, it's still used, but it's used less. It's used less, and Adamant's a little bit more. 2.1% is Brave. It's interesting to know because it does get Hammer Arm, so that's kind of cool. You know, so I mean, like, there's a lot of information in these 4 ways. Showdown is really useful. Showdown's really useful in building a team. It shows you in a very good format what you have, your EVs, your moveset, and it's a really good way to just kind of check with the global link, like, oh, do I have something, like, real quick for Sylveon? And let's see, do I have something for Sylveon? Yeah, I've got Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn's not too bad. Camerup's actually pretty good as well. Ferrothorn is kind of cool. Probably the best, you know. I mean, HP Fire is going to be a problem, but I think this one's designed to survive that. Camerupt resists the Hyper Voice, which is something you're going to be seeing a lot. Tyranitar is actually, believe it or not too bad against Sylveon, because Assault Vest and Sand actually kind of make it really bulky, so it can take that, hit it back with some Rock Slides. So honestly, this team's sort of a little weak to Sylveon. It could use something else. I had Cradily in this spot. I got rid of it because I was really weak to Terrakion. Terrakion could do quite a lot of damage to this team. So I got rid of it for Gastrodon, and you know, Aegislash was also kind of a problem for this team. Physical carry Sacred Sword, special could hit, you know, like Flash Cannon for the Cradily, Flash Cannon for the Tyranitar, Shadow Ball for Cresselia or Dusclops. Camerupt, while can take a Shadow Ball, doesn't really want to switch in on a Shadow Ball, and Ferrothorn can handle it pretty well, but, you know, Gastrodon was kind of my answer to my fighting weakness on my team, and my steel weakness on my team. So, really, the moral of the story, guys, is go through your team, and at the very least, be able to handle the top 12, because sure, something like, I'm just going to throw out a random example, like, sure, an Aurorus can sweep through my team, but is that something that you should really be worried about? No. I mean, Aurorus is barely used. The only problem about the global link is that, like, if you go into choose Pokemon, and let's just for example's sake, let's go for Aurorus. It doesn't really tell you how often it's used. You know, obviously when you see something like the top 10 Pokemon used on the same team, and there's only 6, you know it's really not used at all. And then, you know, actually looking into the 6 is... Looking into this stat right over here is actually really helpful too, because if you look at a Kangaskhan, look at the top 10. All of them have been in the top 12 before, I'm pretty sure, with the exception of maybe Melodic and Azumarill. They've all been, in the current 2015 rules, they've all been in the top 12. Let's see that. So we saw 10 didn't have Melodic or Azumarill. 9 doesn't have Melodic or Azumarill. 8 doesn't have Melodic or Azumarill. But you can see how the format sort of evolved over time. 11-18 is when Oras was out, I believe. So this is the first instance, and you can see Landorus and Kangaskhan have been the top 2 pretty much every single season, it looks like. Yeah, it has been the top 10 every single season. The top 2 every single season. So that's really useful that they show you a history of what happened. So going back, you can see how it evolved. And if you don't see anything in these top 12, you know, okay, so, sorry, got a little off track there. What's really useful about that is if you see these top 12, right, you have Kangaskhan through Bisharp, right? You with me so far? Good. You're going to go back one season. Wait, let's just see something. Yeah, okay. You're going to go back one season, and you're going to see that Cresselia and Charizard are also on the top 12 for last season. So what you do there is you take the top 12 from the current season, you add whatever wasn't on that top 12 from last season, and you keep going through. So let's see. You're gonna have. I'm gonna write this down so I can actually say it out loud as we go. So I'm gonna just do this so I can give you a good starting point. So Kangaskhan, Lando, Amoonguss, Thundurus, Incarnate rather, Sylveon, Heatran. We're running pretty quick on time. T-Flame, Gardevoir, Mence, Aegislash, Politoed, Bisharp. Okay, so then we're going to move on to Season 10. I mean, I think you understand where I'm going with this, and I'm just going to use Season 10 as the example. Alright, so 2 seasons combined. Alright, so you take the top 12 from the current season, which is Kangaskhan, Landorus, Therian, Amoonguss, Thundurus, Incarnate, Sylveon, Heatran, Talonflame, Gardevoir, Salamence, Aegislash, Politoed, and Bisharp. So you take those 12, so you want to make sure you can handle those 12. And then you go to the previous season, see what was not on that list, which was Charizard and Cresselia, and you add them to the list. So now you have a top 14 that you need to deal with, okay? Understanding so far? And then you go to Season 9, and you see, okay, Terrakion has been added to the list. So now you have top 15 to deal with. Now you go to Season 8, and you see Gengar, Rotom-Wash, and Terrakion. So, well, Terrakion was last season. Now you see Gengar and Rotom. So that's the top 17 that you have to deal with. And then you go to Season 7, which is the furthest one you can go, and you see Garchomp was added to the list. Now, to be quite honest, you don't really need to worry too much about Garchomp. If you can handle Landorus, you can handle Garchomp for the most part, and that's kind of why Garchomp went out of the area, because Garchomp wasn't adding anything that Landorus couldn't already do. So that's where you kind of take in, you know, I'd still suggest going for the top 18, which is all the way up through Garchomp, and making sure your team can handle those. Granted, you really don't have to handle every single one of those. There is some overlap, you know. If you can handle Heatran, you can pretty much handle Talonflame, because they have the same resistances going throughout. You know, Tyranitar will pretty much beat both of them. You know, if you can handle Landorus, you can handle a Garchomp. You know, that kind of stuff. So you just kind of have to look at it through your own eyes and kind of decide, am I okay with not being able to handle an Aegislash? The answer to that should be no, because Aegislash is pretty common, but, like, I don't know. If it makes sense to you guys, I think you guys understand where I'm going with that. The most minimum amount of threats that you should handle is the top 12 that's current. The next step from that is going through the previous seasons and adding to the top 12 those that aren't there. And then from there you go to the top you go to the 50 metagame thing, and you take pull threats from there. So that is how I deal with threats. It's kind of a long process. One of the easiest ways to know if you can handle a threat is just to battle. So throw down on showdown, and you'll know pretty quickly how you can handle threats and stuff. Like, you might think you can handle a Kangaskhan, and until you get into a battle, you won't know for sure. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate you sticking around for this long video. It's about 25 minutes, and I do hope to see you guys, at the next episode. Peace.